Woo! All right, let us do this thing. Oh boy. Camera's in a little bit of a different spot right now, or it's aiming a little bit differently. Never moved it, from where it is. Anyway, getting another bonus here because I have to do more tests, of course, which I warned you of. And in the most recent bonus episode that was released to you, which was also a studio test, that you may have noticed, in fact, this gets kind of weird. You may have noticed in that one where the audio, we didn't get the static, but what did happen is it got choppy. Okay. And there are some things in that episode that I want to, that we need to address and that I want to talk about. I want to make clear again that this episode also is a purely bonus episode. Okay. Because it is another studio test, a very important one actually. And, I noticed listening back to the previous bonus episode that I did that there were things I was going to talk about that I did not talk about. That I am going to talk about here. And I am once again, and actually got, here's the funny thing. I say you don't have to listen to this episode, but then so many, like that the channel update bonus episode that I did was incredibly popular. I got tons of questions about it and got some gracious comments on Spotify and YouTube and one of them I want to address in this episode because it speaks to a larger subject. Let's open this up because as of my recording this, and again, now, I have no day job. So I can just show up, sit down behind the mic. I have to fire up the cameras and everything, make sure I'm looking nice. And just start talking. If that's how I want to roll. Of course, the plan is to do much higher productions, than that. And actually, some of those are already done. Just getting ready to release those and having to do some editing work within them. But, I opened up talking about how I'm having all these weird little glitches, in the studio. And, and I mentioned how I'm recording it on a Linux PC, which I'm actually also doing right now. And I had a couple people who I know they're hardcore Apple fans. They messaged me and they're just like, Brian, why aren't you using a Mac? Just use a fucking Mac. Everything will fucking work. And you know what? You're not wrong. You're really not wrong. I know that would largely be the reality, of what would happen there. Though admittedly, I've worked with other podcasts, with their production. And some of the equipment that I have in here, it's the same equipment that I recommend to any podcast, no matter scale, size, whatever. If they're trying to make it big, this is, have a Shure microphone, have a, go with the H6 Essential mixer from Zoom, and so on. I know some of those actually, particularly the H6 Essential, plays very weird with macOS, or at least they used to. But regardless of any of that, okay. Of course, this week, we're at the beginning of March 2026. Amazing, it's 2026. No flying cars. Okay. Obligatory. Done. Apple has been having quite the media event all week long with a bunch of press releases announcing a lot of different products. I am not going to get into a major product review situation here, but this does play very much into a lot of the questions that I got, from the most recent bonus episode. So I want to talk about that. And also, if you're wondering if my camera angle is a little weird and you're seeing something on I guess that'd be the right-hand side on YouTube where you're watching it, that is part of the test that I have to run. I'll talk about that more. I really will. I'll definitely talk about this. And maybe we'll have some fun talking about some other things too, because to do a proper tech test, I have to record for at least an hour. So you got me for an hour, folks. All right. I am so sorry. Apologies in advance. But of course not sincere on that, because I know you people love hearing from me and I love hearing from you so much. So again, thank you so much for the YouTube comments. It's absolutely the best way to communicate with the show. Of course, there's questions at orx.email. You can email the show there as well and get in your questions, and we get plenty of those. But again, I really like, I have to do this tech test now because tonight, Mrs. Sovryn and I have to record more Sexterica. Actually going to be an incredibly controversial episode that we're going to be talking about with Serpent Seed. And I got to make sure all this stuff is working on the Linux box specifically. So, but anyway, we're talking Mac. We're talking about the announcements that happened. And holy shit, does Microsoft have to be rolling over in its goddamn grave? Is Microsoft already in the grave? Yes, I think so. And that's a part of the larger subject here to talk about. Minus the iPhone 17e, which looks fine, like, I mean, if someone has to spend, whatever it was, a $599, if someone has to spend $600 like on a smartphone or something like that, and they're not just going for, what Motorola can do in the $200 to $300 range, or a Pixel 10a, which is also, impressive for what it is. I mean, fuck smartphones, but like at the same time, for what they are, obviously the 17e is the best phone money can buy you, in that range. If you want to consider that mid-range, which is hard to believe that we talk about things, $700 as being fucking mid-range. It's kind of insane. But again, like we said in the last episode, there's no argument for me. Apple makes the best hardware on the planet, like flat out. Software, a little bit of a different story. We'll talk about that for a second, okay? Because some people had questions about that comment, but it speaks to a larger situation. But anyway, 17e looks fine. New MacBook Air looks fucking great. The M5 MacBook Air, and there's a lot of value being done. And this is actually going to, again, also play into a subject here we'll get into in the beginning with a YouTube comment. But really the one that everybody was waiting for, and I think it's no surprise that Apple waited until the end of their press event, that being March 4th, to have this be the final announcement, because they also had new iPads and all that. Okay, whatever. And that's the MacBook Neo. Now the name alone was actually the reason for my comment that Microsoft must be rolling over in its grave. Why? Because one of the most infamous canceled, again, like we talked about in the last episode, Microsoft doesn't take risks. They don't gamble. Why are they gambling now? Very strange. Anyway, one of the most infamous canceled products by Microsoft was the Surface Neo, which was going to be like this 2-screen kind of device. Like, there's whole write-ups now. We now actually have a lot more history about this product. But your Microsoft Sweaties, which used to be a thing, I don't know how much it is anymore. Your Microsoft Sweaties were very excited about this product. I mean, super fucking excited. Kind of in combination with their Courier product, whatever. Anyway, it never happened, and it never became a thing. And now, of all names, Apple names their entry-level MacBook the Neo. Again, Microsoft's got to be rolling over, Was Ballmer still in charge? No. I don't think Ballmer was in charge at the time. Regardless, Microsoft's got to be shitting bricks. I mean, and for many reasons. Also, look, Apple just released a $599 computer. Now, we could talk about some of the, we're going to talk about some of the tech specs here, okay? Because there's question marks that come up with that. But I mean, a $599 Apple computer that's going to play so well with your iPhone, and give you, and I think part of the biggest win here is that it gives you a laptop experience, not an iPad experience, which is closer to a laptop ever since iOS 26. But it's going to give you a laptop experience, and it's going to give you that, perceived, because, there's always question marks of how much do you trust Apple, that perceived level of privacy, right? Like with advanced data protection, and all these other things. And that interaction, again, we'll see how well all that works with only 8 gig of RAM, and no, you cannot upgrade it with the MacBook Neo. Like that's going to be a very attractive thing for people. Okay. I mean, I guess I want to say this here ahead of getting to the YouTube comment. I'm going to get into that in 1 second. Here's the thing. So like I said, Apple's hardware, amazing. And amazingly, this MacBook Neo is all aluminum. Like it seems that as far as build quality, as in the materials, they did not spare any expense on that front, which I think is a smart move, because that's what really gets a lot of people, even when, especially when they don't have an Apple product, when they touch one, they're just like, ooh, there is that ooh factor, right? Because you're feeling, those materials, those high-end materials. So kudos to Apple, for delivering on that front. I think that in many ways, more so even than the software, it's the most important thing that they could do. Okay. Now look, everybody can complain about liquid glass. I never really had a problem with liquid glass. I mean, I have an iPhone, it's not my daily driver right now. I didn't really have an issue with liquid glass. I thought it was fine. I'm always baffled, and I'm baffled by two things. One, I'm baffled by the really vicious response to it. Now I understand if if someone is special needs, or there's accessibility issues that you run into that, of course I understand that, but then that's not the norm, right? Which is why we call it special needs, or, accessibility or whatever. And there's, folks, it's me. I hope there's no shade being thrown at any of that, at anybody, with any kind of issue, where they need something within that. I mean, the tech giant's obsession with accessibility is actually a very nefarious thing, but I'm glad that it helps people, 100%. I'm so glad. Okay. Anyway, don't want to get lost down these turns. I didn't understand, so the pushback on liquid glass I didn't exactly get. But what also baffles me is the seeming lack of realization that, folks, liquid glass is a play for, AR. It's an augmented reality play. It's so that you can see through everything that's in front of you. How have people not realized this? And it's not just Vision Pro, it's also the glasses, the AR glasses that are apparently going to be a thing that we should never allow to be a thing. I might talk about that a little bit later, with recent revelations that the Meta Ray-Bans are sending random and not just random as in you don't know necessarily when they're going to do it, but whatever, by their choice, Meta is having your video that you record put under review by humans. So fuck your privacy. Of course, if you expected privacy from Meta, I mean, that's on you, you fucking dolt. But anyway, so, okay. Yeah. The liquid glass, I mean, it's totally an AR play, and they're getting you ready for that, And I don't understand how more people haven't realized that. I've yet to see somebody comment about that, but that's totally what it is. I don't know. Maybe my prophetic powers, of Sovryn Tech are still here. In fact, actually, it would seem very much they are, based on a report from Gartner that we are going to we'll get into in a minute as well. Okay. But yeah, so the software. Okay. The reality is, and this is true for the MacBook, this is just as true for Windows, and this is just as true for Linux. We're all dealing with ultimately substandard UIs. Really, it's all substandard. Everybody knows that, especially since Windows 11, really ever since Windows 7, that, Microsoft Windows, the UI is basically broken. Either you have a lack of control, or they're just jamming so much crap into it all the time, or you don't get a consistent experience. You could have two of the same exact model computers, and you could have two very different visual experiences, even in the stable channel, between those computers. Features that come out. This is one of the many things, the death of 1,000 cuts killing Windows. I mean, there's also some, really good jabs right in the armpit by by Microsoft as well, as far as Windows goes. But there's definitely also a death of 1,000 cuts. And one of them is just the way features are rolling out within Windows is incredibly inconsistent. It really feels like no two implementations of Windows 11 and I'm not talking about home and pro, I'm just talking about between two different computers, is the same. Even if you went through the same exact processes of updating, same software, all that shit on that computer. It is maddening. I cannot imagine how IT people deal with Windows 11. I mean, I think that's probably one of the larger complaints around that. I mean, fortunately, enterprise releases of Windows, are usually a lot leaner, a lot cleaner. Okay. But anybody dealing with personal versions of Windows, Home or Pro, yeah, holy fuck, what a goddamn mess. So, the Windows experience, the UX, and the UI, are an atrocity. Now, a lot of people, because of that, and also, privacy concerns and, telemetry and all these other things, are, running away from Windows, and rightfully so. And there's a larger conversation to have around that, that maybe I'll get into, about my Linux computer here. Okay. But, and the answer often is because some people still need to use Photoshop or whatever they need to do, is they go to Mac, right? The thing is, like Mac, them running to Mac is what it doesn't say a positive thing about the Mac. It just says a negative thing about Windows. Do you understand? Like Mac itself is a substandard experience, but it's better than the alternatives. That's all. And that is such a true statement throughout much of the tech space, that people aren't going to where things are great. They are just going where it's better than the alternatives. So ultimately right now, Apple is just better than the alternatives. iOS is a disaster, not because of liquid glass, for a bunch of other reasons. Okay. But it's better than the experience you say you might get on Android, and certainly Linux phone. No shade. So this is such a key thing to understand, is that there is no rooting for, and I don't mean like rooting a phone. I mean, there is no cheering for any of these companies. It just so happens that one just does it a little bit better than the alternatives. That doesn't mean they do it well. They just do it better. Better is not great. Does that make sense? Okay. As long as we got that clear. Now, so this is where, a lot of people would run to a MacBook, like the MacBook Neo, for $599, or pay a little bit more and get Touch ID and all that stuff, right? You can all go read press releases, if you want, like all the tech specs, though there are certainly aspects I want to talk about here. Okay. People will run to this, but only because Windows is so bad, not because MacBook is so great. It's not. It's just, the hardware is fucking awesome, like I said. Okay, but it's not that much better of an experience, and there's not that many more things that you can do. I mean, fuck, I have Raycast. My big rig Windows machine is downstairs, but I have Raycast on that now, and it works great. I love it. I fucking love it. Like it's not like there's that many other things you can do on MacBook, or on macOS than you can on Windows. It's just that the experience overall is a little bit better. And of course, more consistent. That has more to do with the hardware, though, I think, and the hardware software relationship, like that tight integration that Windows will, at this stage, really never have. Okay. So all of this is getting to a point that I made in the previous episode, in the previous bonus episode, about how the personal computer is effectively dying. And it's not dying by our choice. It's not because consumers aren't buying them. It's because consumers are getting priced out of these devices. Okay. And I'm going to, let me bring this over here from the other screen. So I'm going to, again, totally bonus episode for here, folks. If we are still getting like tech issues with the audio or something, I apologize. This is why we're doing it. This is why we're working it out. So I'm just going to be kind of rambling here and just rocking and rolling. All right. So let me pull this over, and I'm going to read this comment from the most recent bonus episode, which was titled Frack Nick Land, and I did use Frack. Frack Israel and Frack the Tech Giants, right on. So, okay, here's the comment. I agree with your comments about the circle jerk financing of the AI companies buying up all the computer parts as being by design. Okay. I think this also aligns with the push for age verification everywhere now, even on the OS. Yes, and I want to talk about this. We'll get into that as well. And just as conveniently, Amazon and Microsoft releasing articles about your computer being in the cloud, right? Which happened. And if I think of it, I may put links to these, but they're very easy to find. Where Microsoft is pushing Windows 365 now. Of course, the hilarious thing was when they kind of launched it, like the next day there was an outage already. Fucking insane. And Amazon, of course, that's the comment I mentioned by Jeff Bezos, where he was basically saying that like having, basically full power Turing complete computers in your home is a wasteful resource. Okay. There's a larger conversation I could have around that, because what Jeff Bezos is saying, there is a logic to it. But when we live under the thumb of authoritarians and asshats, though I repeat myself, no, we need full power computers. Okay, like I was saying, if you're told that, well, you don't have to code anymore and you don't need a powerful PC, you just got imprisoned in a digital hellscape. I'm not saying everybody has to learn how to code. That's not what I'm saying. Okay, but I am saying if the incentives are to no longer learn to code and you're being told like, oh, what a waste of time and all that stuff, you are setting people up to be prisoners within a digital hellscape, which directly affects the meat space world. So let me keep reading the comment here. I think these companies are going to push for thin clients everywhere to quote unquote protect the children. I put that in quotes, emphasis mine there. They don't want you to do anything they don't have complete control over. You won't have a general purpose computer anymore because you won't be able to find parts you can afford. And it might actually get that way with the cell phones as well. At least for me, there are too many stories coming out from all over the place to be random. I think it's coordinated. At least that's my theory. My theory, listener, thank you so much for the YouTube comment. I really, really appreciate that. Those are helpful. And I know how brilliant my audience is. And it just shows here because I completely agree with your theory. Like you're so spot on. And you're absolutely right. Like it's insane how many stories, how many things are coming together right now that point at all of this being so. Now, some people, and I want to touch on this, okay? Actually, let me go to, here's a story from Windows Central, where they are pointing out, here's the headline, the sub $500 entry-level PC segment will disappear by 2028. Rising memory costs are driving cheap PCs to extinction, and 2026 is when it all begins, okay? Now, this is from a new study from Gartner, of all things. And this is exactly what I was saying, is that like affordable PCs are going the way of the dodo. They're not going to exist anymore. Now, I want to we got a couple points we got to touch on here. One, I have always said on Sovryn Tech for years and years and years that actually no PC should actually cost less than $600. Like none. That just shouldn't be. And the reason that they did cost less than $600 was because of subsidization. Whether it's with some, honestly, spyware or adware or, something like that, something was subsidizing, that hardware basically being sold at a loss or, being sold at an even, if I'm to use that phrase, because of, again, the subsidization. Okay. So now I still stand by that. Okay. But the thing is, this is getting much, much worse, and you're already seeing it. Samsung already upped the price of their phones by $100, $200, depending upon which class we're talking about. We did see, granted you're getting a little bit more with it, but with Apple, we did see a price increase on the MacBook Air, I think by $100, if I'm not mistaken. Regardless, if I'm off a little bit by the numbers, the point stands. Okay, that there is this slow creep of increase of prices. Now, it may not be so dramatic on Apple's side. And in fact, with the MacBook Air, the M5 MacBook Air, Apple's actually offering more RAM and more hard drive, double the RAM and hard drive than their entry level, MacBook Airs of previous years. This year. Now, you might be saying, well, Brian, doesn't that call bullshit on your theory? No, it does not. 2 reasons. One, it doesn't call bullshit on the theory because Apple, much like this listener in the YouTube comments, as well as, myself, have said, like, the tech giants are buying up all of the memory. They're creating the RAM apocalypse and issues of graphics card, being able to buy graphics cards or, graphics cards having insane pricing and everything, partly because the companies are all selling to each other within themselves and it's not even available to the consumer. Okay. So because of that, Apple really gets, they get first choice because the company, TSMC, whoever it happens to be, the manufacturers, they know, Apple products are going to sell. As to where with other companies, like Acer or Asus or, whoever, it might be a bit more of a gamble. Okay. So basically, Apple's already bought its RAM for the next 2 or 3 years or so. So they can actually offset that cost. And they certainly did this, in preparations for the tariffs that would get implemented recently, over the past couple of years as well. But yeah, so they're ready. They can kind of price in a little bit ahead of time. Okay. Now I do also think, I got 2 points to make on top of this. I do also think that Apple, they're increasing the amount of events of releasing products. And I think now there's never just one reason for anything, but one of the reasons that they're doing this is so that they can more quickly inject price hikes into their product line. And you don't notice it because, it's the boiling frog. I really think that's a major factor in why they are having more frequent product releases. Okay. Instead of just one MacBook event a year, you get 2 or you get 3. Instead of just one iPhone event a year, you get 2 or you get 3, and it might go up. And again, they'll kind of keep slowly and raising the price, and most people won't notice. And with smartphones, those are, talk about subsidized. Those are often subsidized through your carrier, through your mobile carrier anyway, for most people. Okay. Now I don't roll that way, but for most people, that's how it goes. So they're not even necessarily going to notice. But, again, I think this is part of what Apple's doing. Now, the other part to this is the MacBook Neo actually, I think, proves our theory true. Because what does the MacBook Neo come with? 8 gig of RAM. Let's be clear here, and I don't care if it's running Mac OS. 8 gig of RAM is a fucking insult. It is an insult to suggest that is suitable for, and I don't just mean power users, basically for anybody. Nobody should be buying a computer that doesn't at least have 16 gig of RAM. Nobody. Even if you're running Linux. Yes, you can. Oh, there's versions of Linux you can run on 2 gig of RAM or less. I know. But still, you shouldn't. Because ultimately, our web browsers have only become more and more resource hungry. Okay. That's ultimately what you have to deal with. The OS restrictions, who the fuck cares what the OS needs today? Now it's not even about gaming. Now it's okay, well, how much does the web browser need? And whatever else. Can I play my 4K Netflix videos on this fucker? Which those aren't 4K. It says 4K. No, they're not. Shut up. You don't know what you're fucking talking about. Don't worry, I'm here for you. Buy physical discs, please. the whole track I could get into on that. But I don't want to get lost here. Okay. So, the irony is that, yes, okay, we knew concessions had to get made for the MacBook Neo to be at $599. The RAM is an easy thing to point at, or an easy way, having less RAM in it is an easy way to make, to make a concession. However, what's more interesting is a computer like this, okay, like the MacBook Neo. They are prepping you, in my opinion, like this is a mental prep for you to think you don't need more RAM, to think you don't need more hard drive space. It is like, these are, I think I heard Andy Inocto, I love his work. I think I heard him say like that the iPhone 17E, what does the E stand for? It stands for enough. Okay. And Apple is basically making the play for the average consumer to understand what their, or what should, not just Apple's, but Silicon Valley's concept of what enough is. So they're prepping you for, yeah, you don't need a supercomputer. You don't need a powerful home PC. So again, I think that, because again, most people would probably say, well, if Apple can get away with selling a $600 computer, then, the end of the PC clearly is not happening. Oh, no. No, the fact that they are interested in even getting in this category, in this price category, in this consumer category, is proof that they know that high-end PCs are going to be for the rich, for the well-off, the better off, whatever. I don't like to use the word better because it sounds like they're better. They're not. So I think actually the MacBook Neo like proves the theory that the end of the PC is being pushed by the tech giants, including Apple. Oh, but Apple's never going to stop making really powerful computers. I'm not saying they're going to stop making powerful computers. I'm just saying you're not going to own them. We already have HP offering a subscription model for their laptops. I'm not kidding. And you never own it. It's a lease. This is already happening. They are coming for your PC. What's one of my oldest sayings on Sovryn Tech? Your PC is your only country. Well, guess what? They're going to make all of you people of no country. Unless you got the, unless for whatever reason, you've wormed your way into such a way that that you've got the money, to do that. They're coming for it. They don't want you to have the latest and greatest video cards. No, they don't. They don't want you to be able to do this shit at home. They don't want you to be able to run local models of AI. Bad situation. And yeah, the smartphone thing, I mean, there's so many other factors. Like, a smartphone is in many ways a product of its environment. Okay. And what I mean by that is, like, there are a lot of external factors. Like, a powerful PC is just a powerful PC and can do its own shit and do it, and whatever. Okay. But like, a smartphone has a certain environment around it and connectivity necessities that, where there are other controlling factors to a smartphone. Okay. And I'm already seeing the narrative as well with smartphones. I'm already seeing the narrative where journalists are saying, yeah, we need to get away from like the annual release of smartphones. That is, I think, also a creeping in, okay, of, get ready. Like, you're not going to have more and more powerful smartphones. Like, that's already a creeping in of that narrative. But like, here's the thing. So effectively, like, my big rig laptop. Okay. Honestly, if I lost internet connection, there is so much shit I can do on that thing just without an internet connection. It's, and I don't even want it. Like, look, the internet is a hostile foreign power. You understand? This is part of the reason that I want a powerful computer, because I know that. I know the internet is coming to get me. It's coming to get all of us. Now, of course, there's a major metaphysical conversation perhaps, to have around that, but also a technical one. I'm not going to do that here. Ask the questions if you want. Get in on the YouTube comments for me, folks, please. Or Spotify. Take your pick. Or email. And any old email I've ever given you before, believe me, it still works. So you can email those too if you don't remember, questions@orx.email. Okay. But the internet is a hostile foreign power coming for your devices. So without the internet, my computer is fine. In fact, the way my whole house is fucking wired is fine. I don't care. Well, you don't have Spotify. I can't listen. Are you kidding me? Do you know how many millions of songs I have? I mean, the reason that I want immortality is because I have so much to do with everything I already have. And I don't mean like, oh, stupid, I don't mean like video games and movies and shit. I mean like books and things to learn and to explore the universe, to enjoy all this stuff. Holy shit. I don't need the internet for any of it. I don't need the internet for anything. I've made sure to set up my life that way because I know it's a hostile foreign power. Where did I get that term from? Steve Gibson actually said that brilliantly. Maybe a year or two ago, he said that on Security Now. So I'm not the one saying it. I mean, I agree, as I often do with that man. But Silicon Valley doesn't like people like me. No. No, you need to be dependent on us. You need to be subscribing to us. And that's where the smartphone, back to the point, that's where the smartphone, comes in that, well, yes, I mean, there is the idea that the smartphone is going to end up becoming the computer where it can have connectivity options, like with Apple's foldable coming, of course. Android 16 was supposed to have that full desktop mode. That did not exactly happen that way. Maybe it's still coming later this year. But, Google is working hard on that because they expect Android to be like the thing in the PC market, which, of course, also points at the idea that, no, you don't need a supercomputer anymore, right? Why? Because Android doesn't need a supercomputer to fucking run. You can virtualize it with a very low-end machine, even on Windows. Okay. So, ultimately, though, a smartphone is nothing without connectivity. Ultimately. Yes, you can set it up in such a way, where, like, okay, so I don't have it up here because it might be one of the reasons that I'm getting, like, sound errors with recording the podcast. And I have to work on that because I got shielded cables. Like, that's part of why that whole scenario baffled me. But anyway, my daily driver right now is, the 2025 Moto G Stylus. Very inexpensive. I got it on a deal for $25. That is no exaggeration. Okay. Like literally that's all I paid for this thing. Okay. Now what I like about it is it has a headphone jack, which by the way, MacBook Neo headphone jack. Apple, where's that courage, baby? Where's that courage? You fucking liars. You fucking liars. You fucking scum. I don't care how good AirPods are. There is no world in which removing the headphone jack on the iPhone was not an ecosystem play on your part to trap people into your product line. Courage, my goddamn Hebrew ass. Anyway, and the AirPods are great. Don't confuse me. Now, Bluetooth, being that close to your brain, is that great? That's a separate conversation. But that's also why I like that my Moto, Moto Stylus still has, it's a 2025 phone and, gets the latest updates and still has a headphone jack. Awesome. It also has a micro SD card. I happen to have, from my old Switch 1, I had a spare 1 terabyte micro SD card that has basically become, for many intents and purposes, extinct. Like it's it's out of date. It's not the latest spec. It won't work in the Switch 2 or whatever else. Okay. Boy, talk about Talk about getting people into product lines. Anyway, so I had the spare 1 terabyte, micro SD card, and I popped it into that. Now, with a one terabyte in a smartphone, you can hold a lot of shit. You can hold a lot of podcasts, a lot of audiobooks, a lot of stuff, a lot of music. Yes, that thing can work beautifully offline if I wanted to, to consume stuff. But that's all it can really do is consume. To like make shit, yeah, technically it has a camera and you can do stuff with pictures or whatever else. But like to really like make dynamic stuff, no, not really. Not in the long form, no. And if you think so, you're lying to yourself. You're lying to yourself if you think that. I mean, maybe with the desktop mode and running LumaFusion, on an Android phone, you could do it. Maybe Apple will figure something out, but even the most diehard Apple fans will, admit that, yeah, I still want Mac OS. Okay. Yeah. iPad OS 2026 is great. The multitasking is really, really great, but I still want Mac OS. So this is my point. Like a smartphone is about consumption, which is ultimately what the tech giants want you to do. They really, yes, they want you to create somewhat, but even that with AI, what is even all that about? And yeah, sure, they want you creating shit with AI, but then how do you create shit with AI? By paying for a subscription service. So once again, you need to be connecting to the internet. You cannot do it all offline. So that's my point, is that the smartphone is a different animal ultimately than the PC. It's still a computer technically, but ultimately there's a lot of external factors involved with it as to where your average laptop doesn't need external factors. It just needs a power plug at some point during the day. That kind of independence is anathema to capitalism. Especially the tech giants who are leading that charge. So, did I get in everything I wanted to on that? I think so. Okay. So let's shift it up a little bit. Again, this is a totally bonus episode, folks. So don't mind my rambling nature here. Upcoming episodes, I think you'll be will be far more. They'll be like Sexoterica, where there's like very, set structures and things like this. But again, the response from the last one I did, people have loved it. So great. I'm glad I'm not wasting your time as I'm spending mine. I'm not wasting my time, but this is how I have to spend it. Okay. Yeah. So about the Linux machine, I mentioned that at the top of the previous bonus episode. And so I want to touch on it here very quickly. This is I really like this little machine, and I'm going to talk about Linux overall because yes, I am in the camp that unless it's for like a gaming PC, nobody should be using Windows anymore. Like get the hell away from that. I recorded, but again, I ran into the studio audio issues. I recorded this like 2-hour episode. And I hate that the audio was so bad because, I got very angry during it because it happened right after a story that I read where when you're setting up a new Windows 11 PC, and actually it might not even be just when you're setting up a new Windows 11 PC, but it could be when you're getting a major update, like say 25H2 or something like that, that Windows 11 will automatically move files from the normal file structure, the user file structure, like desktop, documents, videos, pictures, music, those folders, right? That normal user folder structure that has existed for 30 years or more. They will move them automatically to the OneDrive folder where it copies that structure. And what was happening is people were deleting their files on their local PC. And then like they would go to find them and they're like, wait, where is all this stuff? And they didn't realize, where they were deleting all of this. Now, the idea that an operating system, without me expressly telling it to do so, that by default, it would move my files. Holy shit. This episode I recorded, I was telling, of course, my brother Robin Freebeard, about it, and I was going to run it by him because, I was fucking livid. I was so mad reading that because, that's the end. Like, that is tantamount to data loss, and what could ultimately end in that as well. And I've said this before, anytime a company causes you to lose data, you no longer give them your business. And this is multiple times over that Microsoft is engaged in this, in actions, whether through ineptitude or intent, of data loss, that end in data loss. Like when I read, and I can't tell you, like you have to understand. This is, I don't know, maybe a month back. I don't live in a big house. Okay. I ran upstairs. It's a tiny house though. I know it has an upstairs and a downstairs and all this, but it's a very tiny house. and Ellen and I like that. Okay. But I literally, and I don't think I ever run in this house. I ran upstairs to my big rig laptop and I started copying everything to my NAS. Everything to my Synology NAS. So goddamn fast. I'm like, holy shit. Because I didn't know what the fuck Microsoft is going to do next. You will not have my data. That company is fucking insane. These are malicious actions against users. And if there's anything I do, I fight for the users. Thanks, Tron. So, which, by the way, Tron Ares, goddamn amazing movie. I think I have to do a couple more bonus episodes just to test all the configurations here. I'll talk about that more shortly. One of them, I want to do some movie reviews because 2025 was a legendary year for movies. I can't believe I'm saying that. And I can't believe it's because of the Predator franchise. But it is a legendary, epic year. Like right up there with 98, 83, 87. Like all of those, fuck man, was 2025 goddamn great for movies. That is no exaggeration. That is not hyperbole. Or as some would say, that's not hyperbole. No, really. Fucking epic year. Insane. But of course, Microsoft is also insane. So, in light of this, when that happened, so I have this spare laptop that I just, I normally use as a test laptop to test out different distros, Linux distros or BSD or whatever. And I came to the conclusion right there. I'm like, okay, I have to finally completely get off of Windows. And whatever I think that I don't have alternatives for, I'm going to have to find the alternatives or I'm going to have to make them myself. Because the situation was that dire. What Microsoft has been doing with Windows 11 is just that bad. That even with the limited amount of things that I actually do on a Windows PC these days, I can't even take that risk anymore. So this laptop had to go back into service. Now this laptop, has an Intel 12th gen i7 in it. It's an Acer. It's one of their Vivo books, but it's the Vero Vivo book. So and this is the reason that years ago, it's 12th gen. So what is that, 3-4 years ago that I had gotten this. One, it was actually a very inexpensive PC at the time. But I had gotten it because the Vero line, and I don't know if Acer's still making these or not, but it's all PCR. They're made out of post-consumer recycled plastic. So, and I think it's a wonderful thing. I mean, kudos to Apple for making the MacBook Neo like out of the most recycled products out of any other MacBook previous. I love that. But yeah, so, this thing is, not a powerhouse by any means. I mean, it has, again, it has an i7, which, in a 12th gen, Intel 12th gen i7. So they came up with, this is like when they first introduced power and efficiency cores or performance and efficiency cores. But they actually did it right before they ran into the problems with Raptor Lake and everything else. So it's kind of like the last decent Intel processor. Of course, would I prefer it to be AMD? Yeah, obviously. But this has, so 12th gen, it has whatever that, Iris Xe2, which does all right as far as, like lighter gaming. Okay. With lower resolutions and all that, which is fine, for me. I might talk about that more in a minute as well, when we get back to like, why would you even want to use Windows today? But yeah, and I mean, I have a 1 terabyte hard drive in it. Like it's a very basic machine, but you put Linux on this thing and it flies. like you don't notice that you don't have, in my opinion anyway, you don't really notice that you don't have an integrated, a dedicated graphics card. You don't notice that it's only 16 gig of RAM. Like it just performs. It just does the job. I'm presently running, and I went through, over the past couple months, I went through a few different distros to really see, what I wanted to sit with. And I mean, I started with Fedora because, they made KDE Plasma, an official spin for them. I went through Fedora. That didn't exactly, I wasn't exactly feeling that. And then I ended up going to Debian, where, I'm incredibly comfortable, with Debian. And Debian's so great for so many reasons, that truly is the universal operating system. In fact, kind of sidetrack, or a little bit of a sidetrack, from that YouTube comment earlier. They mentioned about how this is all like a lot of these recent moves in the, by the tech giants are all about a response to government mandates or potential government mandates, or I don't think it's a response to the government. I think they want it to ultimately. But for ID systems, and it's to protect the children. Right. And right now in California, and I think Colorado as well, there's legislation looking to get passed. In fact, I think in California, it did get passed that starting January 1st, 2027, all operating systems have to put age verification systems within them. And that includes Linux. Now, let's just say it, good fucking luck getting Linux to implement that, wide, like system wide. It's like if you tell the developers of Debian, okay, you need to put age verification in, and they say no, what are you going to do? They're not Apple. They're not Microsoft. They're completely decentralized. There's nobody to go after. And I love that. That's why part of why Linux is so great is, who do you legislate against? So, I think this is not going to work out so well on the Linux side, but it does show just how serious the threat of digital ID is. And digital ID, let us be clear here, is a genuine threat to human freedom. One of the worst threats in history to human freedom. So, so anyway, Debian. I used that for a bit, and that was a great experience. I'm not a fan of GNOME. I get it. I understand it. And I understand why Debian defaults to that, because it's just a lighter weight thing. And if the user wants to add more features to GNOME that will allow it to, or GNOME, we hear it both ways. If a user wants to add stuff to it, like GNOME extensions, then they can. But the install can be as simple, or as lightweight as possible for Debian with that. So I understand why they do that. But I just love KDE. I love KDE so goddamn much. So, so I quickly went to, getting KDE installed on it. And eventually, like, so many cool things are happening with KDE that I was like, you know what? Like, I installed Ubuntu. I wanted to see what that would be like. I wanted to see, first off, if this computer could like accurately handle ZFS. Also, they have where they are allowing for hard drive encryption through TPM hardware. This is something that's still kind of early stages with Ubuntu, and I wanted to mess with that, but for whatever reason, this laptop couldn't do that. I don't know why exactly, and I didn't want to spend a ton of time looking into it. And so I was like, okay, well, if I'm not really going to be able to take advantage of ZFS, and it doesn't exactly make sense with a laptop like this anyway, and I can't use the TPM encryption for the hard drive, then you know what? Like, let's go with something else. Then like the any advantage that Ubuntu has is basically gone. So I started looking at some Ubuntu derivatives, and I was like, you know what, let's try KDE Neon. I actually wanted to try, so KDE, of course, is also coming out with their own Linux. It's out there I think it's still in alpha right now. Supposedly there's going to be a finished product by the end of 2026. If there is, I'll probably jump on that. So to talk about KDE a little bit, first off, as I've said in the past, like, where do I want to go with this? Windows 7, in my opinion, was the best UI, flat out, ever. Like, there was nothing substandard about that. And I think the proof is in the pudding, because both Chromebooks and really, I think in many ways, macOS for some years, were basically implementing features of Windows 7. I mean, even look at Aero Glass. That's basically, like, God, this drives me nuts. Like, everything Apple's doing today is shit that Microsoft had already done for so long. But Microsoft just didn't stick with it, or they just didn't have the ecosystem pull that Apple does. And so people, maybe they don't like these features, but because they don't want to leave the Apple ecosystem, they deal with it. Whatever it is, I don't know. Okay. I mean, my points earlier still stand, but fucking A. Anyway, KDE also very much copies basically Windows 7, right down to well, it's not the start button, but right down to what is effectively their start button, right? Okay. So Windows 7 is that is peak desktop computer user interface. You can disagree with me. That's fine. You're wrong, but you can disagree with me. That's okay. Again, the things I want to say about Windows 7 and that whole situation, but I'm gonna hold back on that for at least for the moment. So anyway, KDE was doing such cool shit. And I use so much of the software that KDE already develops. I'll talk about that in a second. That I was like, let's go with KDE Neon. And when KDE Linux is actually out of beta, and there's a 1.0 product, there's a gold product, I'll jump on that. Okay. Because again, like I said, I love what KDE develops. So for right now, I'm on KDE Neon, and it works so great. Like, this is choice. The one flaw with KDE Neon is, well, it's not really, its greatest advantage, but also it's kind of a disadvantage. The greatest advantage with KDE Neon is that, like, the latest KDE software gets like almost instantly released for it. The problem is it's in your best interest to restart your computer to apply those updates. And those updates come out sometimes multiple times a day. So basically, like, you might want to set your update frequency to like once a week. Okay. And unless you feel like you want to check and you need to restart it for other reasons, or like there's a new major release, or semi-major release of KDE, like 6.2 just came out the other day. But the nice thing is that you get those latest bug fixes and those latest, improvements, software improvements, like instantaneously, regardless of what hardware you're using. It's pretty kick-ass. I'm really, really impressed by KDE Neon. I know that there are a lot of Linux purists who are very much against like snap packages because it's so controlled by Canonical, within Ubuntu. But basically KDE Neon, like you have Snap already set up. You've got flat. I mean, you have access to the best software repositories, like almost instantaneously, like right after install. It's really, really nice. Again, the only criticism I have of KDE Neon, which is based on Ubuntu, of course, but I mean, the only, and that could be a criticism for some, but the only real criticism I have is just that update frequency is, like it's not the update frequency. It's that I would have to restart my computer so much, and cycling power for a laptop that often is not a great idea. But it's easy to solve. I just do it once a week now, again, unless there's like a major point release. And I think you might not even have to do that where you have to restart it to apply the updates, but I think it's the best idea to do so. So, okay. So I'm very impressed with KDE Neon. I absolutely love the state that Linux is in. A lot of that has to do with Steam and their release, of Proton, right? Now there's, fully open source, independent of Steam versions of Proton available. So you don't even have to use what Steam does, but like Steam just pushing forward with these, Windows compatibility libraries, has completely, no pun intended, changed the game for Linux and has turned it into a absolutely viable Windows alternative for the first time, maybe ever. Photoshop perhaps notwithstanding, but then there's even conversations to have around that. And look, like even Kden Live is fucking awesome. For video editing. Audacity has been rock solid for so long. I mean, but I understand that in a lot of work environments, you may need, to use Adobe products. I totally get that. Okay. But that said, and I can say this coming out of my, recent day job. Any company you work for, I don't care if you're working remote. I don't care if you're an independent contractor. You should never, ever use your own hardware to do a job for somebody else. Whether you're independent contracting or, you know what I mean? Like if you're working with a company, if you work within a company, I don't mean for clients necessarily. I mean like within a company, that company should provide for you a laptop or, some kind of hardware for you to be able to do the job that they expect you to do on the long term. You should never use your own shit. You fucking have to have that separation, not of church and state, but of work and play. You have to have that separation, or work and personal, however you want to call it. And if they cannot afford to give you your own computer, don't work for them. Don't. They're cheap bastards. Fuck them. It's not worth it. It is not worth it to have like a really, and I know because I was doing this, to have a really high-end computer and, it's your time off and you're doing your own shit and you, for whatever reason, get a Slack notification or you get this other thing that just completely throws you out of the moment. It is not goddamn worth it. Yeah, there's so many million things. Oh, you can turn off notifications. You can do this. There's so much work involved in turning that shit off. That's something else that, you should never have to do. You should not have to like go through so many hoops just so you can have, just so you can approach a flow state or have general peace of mind, or just be present with the people you actually care about or with what you actually care about and are doing. This is a huge problem with modern operating systems. The whole notification, fuck that shit. Notifications are, I usually don't talk like this, but I'll use a colloquialism. Notifications are the fucking devil. Far and away the worst, the worst development in the computer space ever. It's between that and like multiple tabs in web browsers. Like those are just the two worst fucking things. They destroy your mind. I mean, Bluetooth does too, but like these are things that you might have a little more control over. So Anyway, yeah. all of that said, so I've been using this, this little 12th gen Acer laptop running KDE Neon, to make sure that before I transition my big rig computer, to Linux completely, making sure that I can do everything that I need to do to, because again, I'm doing this podcast, this whole podcast thing, because I feel compelled to, all right, because it's that important, as I talked about in the last episode. But also, yes, like I do expect to make a living off of doing this. I've done that before, so I don't see why it can't be done again. But I need to make sure I can do everything through it, right? And so, this has been the test of, okay, like really, can I do this whole creative process and production process using Linux? And honestly, I can say this now, as of today, as long as this test basically works out. And I don't think the sound issue would have been because of Linux anyway. Like I know that for a fact. Okay. But it'd be more of like a hardware compatibility thing, in which case, okay, I have to figure out something there. But I feel like I can very confidently say, yes, like I can absolutely create full stack, everything that I do, all of my creative pursuits and money-making pursuits through Linux today, 100%. So now, saying that, okay, should you transition to Linux? Yeah, I think everybody should basically either go to Apple, go to Mac, or maybe you just need an iPad, whatever. Go to Apple's ecosystem or go fully open source. And I would actually honestly position more. Now I know you don't have to sign in with an Apple ID into a MacBook. I understand that. That ain't true about an iPhone, but I understand that that's true for a MacBook. Okay. In my opinion, like, especially with the whole digital ID threat, and as I've said for over a decade, ID is for cattle. You are not cattle. At least I hope you don't want to be. Like the whole digital ID thing, like you need to get into a setup that is basically accountless. Okay. Now I've talked about, one of the ways you can secure yourself more is account minimization, right? Or account minimalism. Have as few accounts as possible, right? Like don't have 20 email accounts. You can have one email account that can create, like Apple's hide my email, right? Where you can create pseudonymous emails. Okay. Like that's fine. All right. But have that under one account. Like basically you want as few accounts as possible. And that's still a very good strategy. But I think we're entering a world where like what you're really going to need, and we are at the start of World War III, folks. Of course, I already warned about that, long before what happened over the weekend. What you're really going to need is for things to be as accountless as possible. Okay. Because, while the tech giants are coming for your computers, I think countries around the world are going to be going for people's servers. And if that's where all your shit is, or you rely upon a web portal to get to something of yours that is of key importance, you're playing with fire. So you really want to get to an accountless state, okay? And as much as possible. I'm not saying anybody can get there 100%, but as much as possible. All right? And this is why I push for, like open source stuff. Okay. My other warning to that would be, we need to be very, like right now, and this is somewhat part of the accountless thing. Like you need to use software, and I recommend open source. Of course, I always have, but you need to use software that has real people behind it, has experience behind it, and that has been around for a good while. Because right now it's already happening, but like, we're just getting flooded, okay, with software, stuff that of varying quality, some very good, some very not, that is being developed by people who don't know better, via AI. There's amazing things getting made with all this stuff. And there's nothing wrong with making software, for, with AI that say you're going to use on your own machine for yourself and do nothing more. I do that as well. Okay. And there's nothing wrong with, like having AI help you out and starting a business like that can be a great thing. But there are also like a lot of people who are not so smart that, or there are malicious actors of other kinds that can create AI software that, is either not very secure, either by design, either by intent or by accident because they don't know what they're doing. Or whatever. Like there's a lot of dangers around this. So it's more important now than ever to stick with software. That doesn't mean the software is necessarily inherently more secure. Okay. But to stick with software that has been around for a while, in my opinion. Okay. That's just my opinion. Now, part of the reason that I love KDE is that their developers, like they develop so many different types of apps that can kind of do everything, right? And some people get annoyed by this. I love it because they basically like rename everything you're doing and just put the letter K in front of it, right? Like I said, Kden Live or Conqueror or, like K-Bro, whatever it ends up having to be. For example, one of my favorite pieces of software is actually just called Cass, which it's just, like Cast, like Pocket Cast or like Podcasts, but there's a K instead of a C at the front of it. And you can actually install this just about anywhere, even on an Android phone, in fact. And what I love about it, it's a podcast client, but it is a desktop podcast client where you can actually download the podcasts natively and save them. I don't know why this is so. I know there's like Gpotter and, there's other ones, but like for some reason there is this real like dearth of podcast clients for the desktop. And it annoys the hell out of me, that's so. But I like, even on my Windows machine, I actually install Cass because KDE develops like for everything. And I mean, I love this. And there's a bunch of things like in a very real way. And that's without even getting into like using Waydroid to emulate Android, on a Linux machine. Like you can have your laptop, your Linux laptop or desktop do 99.9% of what your smartphone can do. It's very impressive. Okay. But basically, as things go through like KDE's quality, I come to often trust software that is developed by and released by KDE. So that makes my, that makes my decision making very simple in what I'm going to, to end up using. So, and I keep things pretty lean and mean as far as that goes. Doesn't mean KDE always makes the best software. Like KDE makes a Office suite. I don't use that. It's fine. I do use LibreOffice, KDE makes Conqueror, as a web browser. I still use Firefox, so like, yeah, there's still points where you pick and choose, but also in those instances, like I'm choosing something that is, well established. And that's so important to do right now. More so than ever. Okay. But you really want to get to this accountless state. Why? Because when you don't have an account, you can't be shut down. Or it's harder for you to be shut down. Yeah, maybe someone would have to actually like come up to your computer, remote code inject, and like take it over or something like that. But at least, like has happened many times with Microsoft accounts, and yes, even recently there have been some horror stories, where like people have been blocked out of their Microsoft accounts and like can't log into Outlook, can't log into even Windows, and or Apple or Google accounts. All horror stories there as well documented. Like where somebody thousands of miles away can just turn off your access to all your files and to everything you're doing. You don't want that. And the best way to mitigate that, and I use the word mitigate very, very intentionally, is to be as accountless as possible. Now, that means you're going to have to like back up your own shit and things like that. And that can be a very expensive proposition right now with hardware or, hard drive prices as they are. But I definitely recommend getting into that habit as much as possible. Or you can use things like SyncThing or whatever. I mean, like there's a lot of different ways you can go about this, where you could be more accountless or at least anonymous with your account, right? Like Mulvad, as a VPN, easily the one that I recommend. Mulvad you don't give them your email address. You don't give them any of that. They give you a random account number. Like they do it so right. And you don't even have to pay with like your credit card if you don't want to. There's other options. Like such a great company. I mean, this is another great reason to use Linux because WireGuard, the VPN protocol, WireGuard is built into the Linux kernel. So like when you're running a VPN on a Linux machine, it really doesn't, there's like almost no overhead. Okay. And I set my VPN settings really high, right? like to where, where it's like fuzzing traffic to prevent, AI snooping, lots of this other stuff, multi-hop, like I go really, really high. So, as to where Windows does it through a degree of virtualization, right? I mean, it's not exactly virtualization, but whatever. Like absolutely, running Mulvad VPN and NextDNS on my Linux laptop, I don't even notice the difference as far as resource usage. Sure, speeds might be slower at times, but I know that that's, with accessing websites or downloading files, but that's the trade-off I make for having some degree of piracy. And when we think about like exploits, recent exploits like AirSnatch with, I know it's a funny name, but, but with AirSnatch with, pretty much every fucking, like router on the planet, you need to be running a VPN all the time. Or at least it's a pretty good idea to do so. So running Linux and VPN all the time, like it's a 1-2 punch and a great one. That aside, okay. I just love that. Like really in a very real way, I could get away with not using my computer anymore and just have like a really great Linux laptop, which basically doubles the battery life of most laptops just using Linux, compared to Windows anyway. Not so much with MacBook, different story there. Of course, we all know the legendary battery life of those, and great, like seriously, no insults here. I could get away with, in many ways, not even having a smartphone. It's awesome. So, to say nothing of like with Signal, where I can actually encrypt the Signal container on Linux, which cannot be done on Windows. And apparently last time, my understanding, MacBook doesn't have that, or macOS doesn't have that issue. But my last understanding was that with Windows, like you are never going to be able to actually encrypt what's being stored from Signal on your Windows PC. So another great advantage there. Okay. Look, I've always been saying like go to Linux for a very long time. And for a while there, I made the concession that like, okay, look, just whatever fucking ecosystem or platform you're on, just get in that lane, get as good as you can with it and just do that. Like, again, that was more that account minimalism and software minimalism, which software minimalism is also still valid. But like now it's at the point again with digital ID, with a lot of other, and like just the shit that Microsoft is doing, fucking A, with Windows, within their own servers, their inability to secure them. I can't just say that anymore. I can't just say like, oh yeah, just use Windows, but just do this, blah, 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 blah. No, get the fuck off of there. To quote Captain Kirk, let them die. Go to Apple if you must, please. Just let Windows fucking burn. I'm not saying it's going to. There's too much inertia right now. And I mean, in one sense, playing devil's advocate here, Microsoft creating a subscription model cloud-based version of Windows, with Windows 365, Like, yeah, that's going to be a far more secure implementation of Windows and consistent implementation of Windows than everybody having their own Windows PC. And so from a security standpoint, there's a really great argument to make for that. But to believe them on that's why they're doing it, to believe them, I mean, they're killing Xbox too. That's a whole other fucking can of worms. Okay. But to believe them, we would have to see from them that we can trust their server-side security. And it won't take a very long search engine search to see we can't trust them with that. And we probably never will. So it's not any better, ultimately. And again, the internet is a hostile foreign power. Never forget that. Never, ever forget that. Okay. So, again, we're at the point. Look, again, I don't care. Go to Apple if you must. Okay. If that makes you feel a little more comfortable. They just gave you the best excuse. $599 MacBook. Like that computer. I mean, the 8 gig of RAM thing. Yeah, I think that's pure bullshit. The fact that it still has a headphone jack is pure bullshit. No, don't confuse me. I love headphone jacks. Just Apple's full of shit. And I'm not going to let go of that. Okay. We need to remind them how full of crap they are. Okay. Very often, but they gave you a great excuse to just head over there. Okay. And if you don't want to go to Apple, you like your Android phone or whatever, and you want that like system, that ecosystem integration, look, KDE again has you covered, right? With KDE Connect. That works great on a Linux PC and an Android phone. Hell, it works great on a Linux PC and an iPhone if you're going to do that mix. And that's a potent mix. That is a very secure situation you have for yourself. And I mean that. Awesome. Okay. But KDE Connect, phenomenal. You can respond to text messages. You can do, like transfer files, images, all that. Amazing what you can do with that. So, in my opinion, there's no more excuses. Okay. The one thing that for most people, or the two things really for most people with Windows has always been, yeah, but I need to run Photoshop. Well, again, if you can afford a MacBook, now's the time to buy a new computer before you get priced out of the ability to do so, of course. Maybe now's your time to go grab a MacBook. And to Apple's credit, a MacBook that you buy now is probably going to do very well for you even 5, maybe even 10 years from now. And they've always been that way. Like that's just in their fucking company DNA, amazingly, thankfully. For example, like I always talk about this, my original 98 iMac was running 15 years later. I mean, and still useful in and of itself because it's a full-on computer and not a smartphone. But anyway, so, and the other part, so yeah, if you have to run Adobe, okay. The other part is gaming. Sure, I get this. Okay. Will I probably dual boot my, my big rig Asus laptop? That might be the case. And it's entirely, now here's the thing, or I was going to say it's entirely to run some games. Okay. I play Age of Empires 2, Ellen and I, we play that all the time. Okay. Now I can actually play that very well. Thank you, Steam, or thank you, Valve, with Proton. I can actually play Age of Empires 2 very well on this, 12th gen Intel laptop with integrated graphics. That's remarkable. Of course, it's a very old game. So, I mean, that makes some sense, but they've, made visual enhancements to it. So it's not like that old per se, if you don't want it to be. So, yeah, I might keep like a Windows installation around just to run, Doom the Dark Ages, or which I know can also run on Linux. And I mean, maybe that won't end up being so much of a thing. Where a lot of the games that I play actually will play, really, really well and instantaneously, on Linux, even better over time. There are classic games that I would still play that I know do not work on Linux. Like I have not been able to get Star Trek Judgment rights to play on Linux, no matter what I do. And even if GOG says that that it's playable on Linux, they're lying to you. Like they have not updated their Linux packages for a lot of their classic games in years, years and years and years. I'm actually very worried about that company. I'm not happy with GOG. Where I used to previously, I used to be like, okay, that's the place where I'm going to buy the games. Not so much anymore. Anyway, so there's little games here and there that, likely would require Windows of some kind. If I was going the MacBook route, yeah, maybe I would, pay for parallels and subscription, but I hate paying for subscriptions, and that's also slightly expensive. Say nothing of how much a MacBook would cost. So I don't know that I would go that route, to be able to do that, just for video games, especially, and very particular ones. It's not a very cost effective direction to go. So I might just leave, again, I might do a dual boot situation, in that regard, because yeah, there are games that, and even ones that get made by new developers that are not, say, on itch.io or are not on GOG or not on Steam or whatever, that are Windows binaries, and they may not play well with Proton. And so, yeah, you do in a way need Windows, or you can virtualize Windows perhaps, but then, that raises the level of technical proficiency required to be able to just play some goddamn games. So, something I've said, like I said to you, I've been recommending people switch over to Linux for a very long time, for over a decade. One of the things I've always recommended is okay, yeah, I get it. You need a Windows machine to use Photoshop, or you need a Windows machine to, to play certain video games, right? So my recommendation always was just have a Windows PC that does nothing more than Photoshop and video games, and just have it off to the side, and you use it and pull it out whenever you need to do those things, and that's it. The problem would be with that recommendation that you may first think of is that, wait a minute, Brian, but you're telling me that, PCs, we're going to get priced out of PCs and you won't have access to, that won't be possible in the future. Okay. To just buy a separate, the idea of owning two PCs is just a very expensive proposition. And you'd be right, in saying that. But the difference now is most developers, most game devs are now also, the big ones, for your AAA games that require that kind of horsepower, are now also, taking Linux very seriously. And they're making sure that these Linux games are verified for Steam. Now, the funny thing is, in a small way, I almost blame Valve for this, shall we say, post-PC world that we're entering into, because the Steam Deck, which the lowest version of that is very underpowered. Ultimately, in comparison, right? So I'll say relatively, because game developers know that to be Steam Deck verified is a very desirable goal, right? This is like how, companies like Capcom or something would make a version of their game where they would just tank the FPS, the frames per second, and the graphical, the graphical properties, just bring them all the way to the floor so that they could sell it on Switch, because the Switch was so underpowered. Same situation. But because the Steam Deck was so popular, and because, developers are well, but I want to make sure my thing is Steam Deck verified, Steam actually led the way to low-end PCs being a desirable product. That unfortunately, there's a part of me that feels oh man, I mean, I love the Steam Deck. I think it's I don't have one, but I think it's a great device. And I have, friends that have them and they love them. And I think that's great. Okay. A huge fan. I'm not, but at the same time, it also showed the market viability of low powered PCs, and that for some people, that's enough, because the singular, outside of enterprise, the singular market category that was actually keeping, like the tech giants' wet dreams of entering the post-PC era, the singular market category that was preventing that from happening was gamers. And gamers are still the only ones that are like really holding that back, because gamers want their shit, need their shit working locally. Gamers are like professional athletes, and many of them are actually. But gamers are like professional athletes in that they're always searching for that 1% difference to be better than the next person. Athletes are the same way. And I respect that. Like, that level of optimization is very laudable, and applaudable, right? Maybe those words mean the same thing. And so and I've been saying this forever, that like gamers are saving the world, because gamers are the only ones that have been holding the tech giants at bay, ironically. The problem is that like Nvidia has basically now like gotten in bed with, the rest of the tech giants. So is AMD, and Intel is dying. So, we're in this very nasty, malicious, perfect storm. And I don't think even the gamers can really solve this one. And so, again, you're seeing people basically, and this is another thing too, is that like the video gaming landscape is very much changing, right? Because like, what do you even need to play now? Yes, like Capcom is reporting, just as an example, they're reporting that like 2/3 of their sales are on PC now. Like, they're making crazy money on PC, which good. But by and large, that's just within Capcom. But by and large, like, what is video gaming now? Video gaming now is Fortnite. Video gaming now, is like all those kinds of games. Okay. It's not really like the local first person shooter with high graphical fidelity, and all this other stuff. Like that's still a thing. But just like the consoles are very much, or some of the consoles are dying, like that concept of like the single player video game experience is very much becoming a niche. I'm not saying it's going to go away. It'll never go away, but it's becoming more of a niche. It's not the super profitable thing. I think some of the bigger first player or single player experiences, even if they have multiplayer components, some of the bigger single player experiences that we've had as late, the only reason that they've even been able to be released is because most of the development houses, the game development houses, are now all owned by Microsoft, ironically. Speaking of failing companies. But anyway, we're in a very different world. We're in the world of microtransactions and these dumbass battle royale games and, things I have absolutely no interest in. Nintendo, of course, none of this applies to them. They are the odd man out, much like Apple, and Satan bless them for it. I think that's great. So, there's always companies where the rules don't apply. And Nintendo happens to be that, but that's honestly also just for now. Without spending a ton of time on that subject, I think that there is a very real concern that others have brought up that Nintendo's invulnerability is basically aging itself out. And what I mean by that is that, like, you might have heard the term like Disney adults. Okay. Well, there's also what's known as, and maybe this should be the term. I don't know. I don't like it because it sounds derogatory, and there's nothing derogatory about playing Nintendo. But you could use the term like Nintendo adults. Okay. And Nintendo adults, as in people who are in their 30s, 40s, older, even older, that are still playing Nintendo. And that is probably the bulk of Nintendo's audience, believe it or not. Sure, a lot of them are playing for nostalgia, not always. But I mean, you could see it, like they literally just released like a couple of, almost like 20, 25-year-old Pokemon games, and they sold gangbusters, just last week. Like again, you can see it. It's people who were there and they want to play it in the modern age or whatever. Okay. So you have Nintendo adults. The problem is we also know that those Nintendo adults are not having children. present company included. Okay. And so you don't even have like a next generation for the Nintendo adults to indoctrinate into the cult of Nintendo. So, 10 years, 20 years down the line, and that's without getting into, like health concerns that, and like chronic illnesses that have only increased in frequency. Nintendo's going to run into a problem. I mean, it's going to take a decade or two, but they're going to run into a problem sooner or later. By that time, it'll all be a subscription service probably anyway. And so who the fuck, gives a shit. But yeah, even for Nintendo, like, the piper's going to get paid. And I'm not saying that is a negative. Okay. Like I'm really not, because I completely respect people that don't have kids. Otherwise I wouldn't respect myself. But I'm just saying that's a reality, that's coming down the line. And again, I mean, flip side of that, like I also think that we are, and I don't know if this is true yet, it may already be true, but we're also heading into a time where I think that the life expectancy of people is going to significantly decrease compared to the fact that over the past 100 years, it's significantly increased. So, you have that part as well, where, you're going to have less consumers for less amount of time. Now, all of this might sound very dire. It is not. I actually wanted to talk about some mysticism stuff here in this episode, but I'm already, at about an hour and a half, over an hour and a half, going on 2 hours. So I don't think we're going to get that in here. Okay. All of this, ultimately, these are not bad things. Okay. Like these are necessary times for humanity to go through. Like you can't have the amount of sickness, and I don't mean physical illness. Okay. Like in the Western sense. I mean, you can't have the kind of sickness, mental, spiritual. And I also don't mean like necessarily like mental, trauma-based stuff. I don't mean that. Okay. You can't have this level of just fucked upness. How about that? Without some kind of correction. Like it has to happen. We cannot go on with, like literally insane, psychotic, leaders, quote unquote leaders, without some like that can't go on forever. For many reasons, that can't go on forever. Like either everything just wipes itself out, or you get past it. Like the evil eats itself, and you get past it. And I am in the camp that the evil eats itself. That doesn't mean we're heading into like great times for a little while. It could get bad for some time, but ultimately you come out the other side, with the path, shall we say, corrected. I feel like I want to quote Frank Herbert, as I often do, like I will give them tyranny, that will make their bones ache. Right. But that was to eventually get to the golden path. Now, by no means am I saying anybody in the quote unquote halls of power or within they, them, those are some kind of Leto II. They are not. Okay. Not even close. But I do think we end up better on the other side of these disastrous times. That doesn't mean you don't take the disastrous times seriously. That doesn't mean you walk around with a smile on your face. It's good to get mad. It's good to be angry. Despite what some other spiritual bullshit gurus will tell you. Fuck them. Oh, ignore the body. Oh, and never be angry because that's just going to, inspire whatever. No. Do not ignore the body. Do get angry. Do take action, even if it's just personal improvements in your own life. Every time I hear these people talk like that, holy fuck. But we end up better on the other side. As I've always said, I am a short-term pessimist, but a long-term optimist. Nothing has changed about that. Nothing. So, Um, with that, I mean, could we end up in a future where smartphones don't exist? Maybe. Would that be better? Maybe. Yes. Um, and that's just talking about the tech side. I mean, there's whole other angles of this, to really explore. But please, like, yes, you're going to get depressed. Like, you can't help it. I understand that. But know that we are going to get through this, and we are going to get on the other side of this. There are things you can take actions you can take right now to help mitigate with that, right? Like, crash now, thrive later. If you know the crash is coming, okay, crash now. And that way, when it does happen, you're already thriving. Like that, try that. I mean, there's so many strategies, and that's part of the reason that I feel compelled, to keep doing, or, to continue to podcast. Because, I mentioned this earlier that I was, that I might talk about why, I stopped talking about tech so much. Well, here you go. I've actually, and I think I've said this maybe at points, where I have sat down and recorded entire episodes over the past year or two. I have so many. I could open up the folder. There could be over 100 episodes that I never released. And you know why? Some of them I never even finished recording. And you know why? Because I would get behind the microphone, I would start talking about tech news, and I would just get so fucking mad. Like I said, it's good to get angry, but I would get like incensed. Like, I would be so fucking pissed off. I mean, I would be screaming so loud. And I was like, yeah, getting angry is good, but that is not shit I want out in the world. Like, it wasn't healthy in the sense that, like, cortisol levels should not get that high, because everything that these companies are doing, it's so stupid. And I mean, only now am I able to sit down and talk about this with some degree of calmness. Yeah, I still get heated up, and I know people enjoy that. So I go for it. Okay. But this was far beyond getting heated up. And it's because I knew all of this shit was coming. I mean, I tell you that we're heading into an era where, like a post-PC era, and then Gartner comes out days later and just bolsters the goddamn point that, hey, like, affordable PCs, those are going the way of the dodo. They're going to be gone. That will not exist by 2028. Could things turn around? Maybe, but I doubt it. Because again, all of these things are already bought and paid for. Quite literally. You cannot buy what has already been bought by other companies that they are going to use for this AI crap. So, like, this is happening. So, but that's why. That's why I stopped talking about it, because I would just get behind the mic and would just get, like, it was just not something I wanted out in the world. I would get so fucking livid and so mad. Beyond, I know you think that, like, wow, yeah, I've heard Brian really lose his shit on this show. No, you don't know. You don't know how bad I can lose it. And I didn't want that out there. And, like, following the tech news, it wasn't, like, nothing should be that constantly enraging. Yes, it's good to get angry. It is not good to live in a constant state of anger. But just the level of stupidity that I would constantly see, and I'm going to save the spirituality stuff. There are people who made comments. They thought that it was very, and I love these people. There are multiple people who made comments that they thought it was very strange that I started talking about, like, malicious entities running Silicon Valley, and that the audio on my show would only start to fuck up when I started talking about that. The instant I stopped talking about it, the audio would suddenly go clear. And then I would start talking about it again, and then there'd be all the skipping and everything. You could barely hear what I was saying. That level 2 malicious entities were running Silicon Valley. So I'm going to give you a bit of a tease. Like I said, I have to do more of these bonus episodes, okay? Just to test everything, to make sure I got everything worked out, because some of this stuff is, like, a production level so high, I do not want, like, the idea of going back and recording it all, whatever, like, no, that just won't work. So I got to make sure this stuff is working right. So maybe we'll get into that more. We'll definitely get into it sooner or later, no matter what. But maybe I'll cover it a bit more in a bonus episode. But I will say this, that the ability, or not the ability, it is the ability, but the influence, the compulsion to get that livid as I was when talking about tech news, to like lose my shit that much, is one of the things, just a personal anecdotal point for me. So don't take it as evidence for yourself, but it's one of the things that actually led me in the direction that I'm like, wait a minute, this is affecting me that deeply. There is something more at play here than just like, oh shit, we're going to raise the price on whatever fucking service, or we're going to, there was something else at play. There was some kind of force that could bring that level of anger out of me. And that's not good. There's something more there, because I am a person of, as many who know me, I am a person of, honestly, of incredible composure. I mean, I perform to some degree, you understand? I mean, I'm an incredibly honest person, but like I perform to some degree, on the camera. Okay. I mean, you're getting like, my heart's wide open. Okay. And it's on my sleeve. Like, you're getting me, but I also, whatever, like anybody does in front of the camera. Okay. I just turned myself up to 13, right? But like, when something can turn me up to 20, something's not right. Something is very, very wrong. And, a psychologist would probably say, well, there's something wrong with you, Brian. I don't know about that. I don't know that that's so. I think something else is going on here. Something very dark. Again, that's anecdotal. Don't take that as evidence for yourself. I'll present the other evidence in the future. Okay. But if you want to get started, I definitely recommend looking into Nick Land, who literally says that he talks to demons, and see how much influence Nick Land has in Silicon Valley. And let's see if the audio just fucked up when I go back to this. Okay, that's it. I got to wrap this baby up. Love all of you. Thank you so much for being on this ride with me through the years. And we've got great stuff coming. Really, really excited. Get your comments in on YouTube, do all that stuff. Comment, like, subscribe, wherever you happen to be. Even if you're in Pocket Casts, give me a review on Pocket Casts. You can do that now. Okay. Wherever you happen to be. I would be so honored if you got value out of this. And judging by how people message me and email and all that, it sounds like you do. And I'm so honored by that. So we're getting through this together. Okay. All right. I'll see all of you on the other side.